in Sharm el-Sheikh just a year after the Zimbabwe arrears clearance and debt resolution process began. We did it again in Nairobi. We did it in Washington, D.C., and here we are in Cote d'Ivoire, Abidjan, to give you an update about Zimbabwe's arrears clearance and debt resolution process. That's the mark of transparency and accountability. So there's a lot to be had today, and my job is to welcome you to this session, starting by welcoming Your Excellency Joaquim Chissano, President of, thank you, former President of Mozambique and the facilitator of this process. A big welcome to the Minister for Finance of Zimbabwe, Professor Ntuli Kube. I'm also told we've got Honorable Minister Joram Gumbo, Special Advisor to the President of Zimbabwe, the President of the African Development Bank Group, Dr. Akiumi Adeshina, who is also the champion of this process. We've got members of the diplomatic corps, the ambassador of the European Union to Zimbabwe, Jobs von Kachman. We've got Stephen Ray, ambassador of Switzerland to Zimbabwe. We've got Ms. Imelda Fernandes, the country manager of the World Bank in Zimbabwe and co-chair of the Economic Sector Working Group. During this time, we'll also be hearing from a farmer and investor. But ladies and gentlemen, what I want us to do first of all is to show you a video capturing the process and where we've reached so far. So if the video is ready, please, we can dim the lights slightly and play the video. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. The video, please.
Over the moon. You cannot believe the messages we're getting thanking us for getting to this step.
I never thought we would get any form of compensation.
I believe that much has been achieved within a very limited time.
The African Development Bank is very happy to have championed the debt and arrears clearance process for Zimbabwe. This is a process that began in 2022, December, with the launch of the Structured Dialogue Platform. Prior to that, the Zimbabwean government, and specifically His Excellency President Mnangagwa, had requested the bank president, Dr. Adesina, to become the champion of the debt and arrears process. Following that, Dr. Chissano, former president of Mozambique, was appointed as the facilitator of the process. The bank also provided about $4 million United States dollars to support the process.
The goal of this process really is to get to a point where our arrears are cleared. We need concessionary funding with interest rates of 2.5% and below.
Zimbabwe is the only country for the African Development Bank that is currently actually under arrears, that has arrears to clear. And the African Development Bank has cleared the arrears for two other countries, which is Sudan, we cleared the arrears, and we also cleared the arrears for Somalia. And so it's time for Zimbabwe arrears.
We're again making progress on the economic reform front. We've had a successful currency reform program. Our currency is currently stable. Our reserves are over 600 million at the moment, and we're able to cover the whole currency in circulation. The fiscal discipline continues. I'm very pleased with the outcome.
One of the big wins so far has been really the moving of the quasi-fiscal operations from the Central Reserve Bank to Treasury, really allowing the central bank to focus on areas of monetary policy. So we're seeing successes in both the monetary reforms, the fiscal reforms, but also on the social protection reforms.
When we
deal with issues of governance and the reforms. We agreed on 16 indicators. They are not easy, but we are on it. Sometimes we do well, sometimes we go down, but our eyes are on the ball. We want to be increasing all the time. Under the justice delivery reforms, we have done quite a lot. The Judicial Service Commission has done a lot of work building courts and making sure that justice is accessible to everybody.
So we struck an agreement, which is called the Global Compensation Deed, a few years back, and we have now begun to honor that agreement.
Since 2002, we had no contact with the government for nearly 20 odd years, 23 odd years.
I had put this behind me, so receiving a compensation was, I didn't believe it.
You cannot believe the messages we're getting thanking us for getting to this step. And it's a huge step that government has now started a payment process.
The result is formidable. What we have achieved collectively, what the government of Zimbabwe has achieved with all support, is nothing short of historic.
We will continue as more farmers are vetted, they are approved. We will continue to honor these payments.
That the World Bank continues very engaged in this process. We really praise the African Development Bank for their leadership.
Going forward as the bank, we'll continue supporting the process until its conclusion.
We thank all for cooperating so well and making sure that we get to this stage, this juncture in our process. So clearly clearing our arrears is the way forward.
Now switch on. Thank you so much. So thank you so much for that production. And now we are going into remarks. So we are going to have our chief guests coming on the stage from there where they'll speak from. We've got microphones for each one of our chief guests. Let me first of all start with Enaida Fernandez. If you can come right here, please feel most welcome. Thank you. Let's please escort them with a round of applause. That really does help us to be inspired. Followed by Ambassador Jobs van Kachman. Thank you so much. Welcome. Let me invite Stefan Ray to go to the far left. May I invite the President of the African Development Bank, Dr. Kiumi Adeshina. Followed by Professor Ntuli Kube, the Minister for Finance, Zimbabwe. Professor, most welcome. Please, let's give them a round of applause. And of course, our senior most guest here is the former president of Mozambique, the facilitator of the process, Your Excellency Joachim Chissano. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, these are our guests. Please take your seats. And this is how we are going to run this session. I'm going to invite the President of the African Development Bank, Dr. Adeshina, to speak to us. And then after that, we'll go into a more detailed presentation by the Minister for Finance. So, Dr. Adeshina, you're most welcome. I think there's a microphone there, Mr. President. Okay, very well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, former President Joachim Chissano, former President of Mozambique, my dear colleagues and friends, the EU Ambassador, he always fed us very well in Zimbabwe, the Swiss Ambassador, of course, the World Bank, and I have Mr. Gatete, the head of the Economic Commission for Africa. We have the Central Bank, the Minister Nkube, Professor Nkube, who is doing a tremendous job that's there. I have so many central bank governors of Zimbabwe. I have Muno Mupotola here, my vice president, who have been doing all the work, and all of you that have been partners with us. We have so many partners. Let me recognize the chair of the SADC for being here, and all the others that are here, in particular all the farmers that are here today. Well, I stand here today with a lot of emotion. Emotion because as I listened to the farmers speaking, this was a mission that was considered impossible mission. Impossible mission because for more than 2 decades, there's been no conversation. There's been a lot of animosity, a lot of bitterness, a lot of lack of conversation and engagement. The void was very, very big. The distrust was very massive. Now, I remember when His Excellency President Mnangagwa asked me whether I will take on the role of the champion for the arrears process. I said, absolutely, yes, I will, because I lived in Zimbabwe. I worked in Zimbabwe. I know Zimbabwe. And I know exactly what happened in Zimbabwe. You know, sometimes the mouth and the tongue, they bite each other. But it doesn't mean I must get rid of my tongue. It does also mean I should get rid of my teeth. So it's all about how you work together. And so I knew it has to be about dialogue. And of course, very quickly I told him, well, you know, as president of the bank, I can only do with my team economic and financial issues. I can't get into political issues. And so I asked him, give me one of our foremost leaders in Africa that can handle the often very testy, difficult, and complicated political nuances that we will not be able to get around. And that is how he picked his friend, an incredible president, a man of great wisdom and understanding, who understands the entire political framework. Please give it up to His Excellency President Chisano. And together, you know, we started this work together with the government on what we call a central print strategy. The central print strategy was a very simple strategy that at the end of the day, if you're playing bowling in a bowling aisle, you take a look at the pin that is right in the middle. If you are able to hit that pin, you're in business. If you're not able to hit that pin, you can forget. You're just wasting your time in the bowling alley. The reason is because there are a lot of issues with farmer compensations. And I remember when I told President Mnangagwa that I think that we have to actually start by compensating the farmers that have been dispossessed of their lands. It was a very difficult conversation. I was there with President Chisano. And I tried to make it easier for, Muno was with me there, easier for the president. I say, as a kid, I used to have a lot of malaria. And my mother used to give me Nivaquine. Those of you from Southern Africa, you may not have malaria, but West Africa, if you know Camoquine, Nivaquine, it's very bitter stuff. And I said, my mother found a way that if I had to take the bitter pill, she put it inside of sadza, you know, like a bolus. And she put it inside of okra. And I just take it, and the okra goes down, and everything goes well. I said, Mr. President, that's how we have to look at it, straight in the face and deal with it. And I would like you to applaud the president for taking that decision. And we started working with Professor Nkube, who is a fantastic Minister of Finance for his country, to come up with a framework. And that framework is what led to the structured dialogue process. And the first time we were going to have the first dialogue process was right in the house of the ambassador of the European Union. In fact, when I saw him today, I just asked first about his wife because his wife was so generous in giving us a wonderful dinner at his home. But it was the ambassadors, the bilateral ambassadors, Switzerland and all the others, Germany, and everybody that we had to work with. And so we structured it in such a way that there will have three big parts. One is the economic and governance reforms, which we have to do. The minister will explain that a lot. The other one will have to do with the governance reforms you had on that screen in one of the videos. And of course, the land title, the land compensation issue. Those are the three blocks that we had. So I think that standing here today, seeing what has been done, this has been unbelievable and has been an incredible success. The job is not finished, but I think I feel so proud of every single person, from the head of state to the ministers, the council of ministers, everybody that has worked on this issue just to tell you what has been achieved. If you want to clap, you can clap. Let me tell you what has been achieved against very difficult challenges. First, the Minister of Finance and the central bank governor took a decision that the quasi-fiscal policies that he used to have, which IMF and World Bank are very much involved in this particular part of it, has to end. In other words, stop printing money. Take the loans that you have in terms of debt that you have and transfer it straight to Treasury. I think today, Minister, you have $3.6 billion that has been transferred. This is not supposed to be a quasi-fiscal issue. Yeah. And that has been done. And also, he will explain to you what they've done in terms of liberalizing the exchange rate, market-driven exchange rate. I will not get into it. He's the Minister of Finance, but great, great work. And secondly, is the governance reforms. This is always a difficult one. The ambassador for the EU, I think you chair that, but I can't remember which one you chair. Is that one? Yeah, governance. And it was a very difficult one for all of us because there were 16 indicators that were decided to be done. And we wanted to be transparent. We wanted to make sure we use global standards. And so we agreed that there will be two things, the Mo Ibrahim Index, and then there will also be the World Justice Report Index. And there were 16 indicators that were agreed. Of course, a lot of progress have been made in those areas, and there are areas in which we are now making as well progress. But I can tell you, anti-money laundering, anti-corruption, judicial reforms, electoral reforms, and the anti-death penalty. These are major reforms that have been done, and I think they deserve actually to be congratulated for that. Now, of course, there's the sticky point, which has to do with the private voluntary organization bill, which had been signed by the president. We tried. But look, in life, you can't have it all. And the government person who spoke said it well, which is, we'll continue to move on. I think, for me, the most important thing is the direction. We're moving in the right direction. We'll continue to improve. I know, with the commitment of the president, the commitment of the cabinet, the commitment of everybody else, that any areas that need to be improved on governance will get addressed as we go. There's still a lot of things to be done, and I'm sure that by the time those bills come through Parliament and so on, we will see a lot more progress on the 16 governance indicators. And lastly, I just want to say something about the issue of the land title. I myself am amazed with how the government has actually dealt with it. They've started paying. I won't get into the details. I'll let the minister do all of that. But it is a central pin strategy that worked. Today, we have farmers from Portugal. We have farmers from the old Yugoslavia. We have farmers from Switzerland. We have farmers from everywhere that are being paid by the government. And as you heard, they never thought that was possible because we were thinking of the farmers. We were thinking of the work that if we don't do that, we will not make a progress. And thank you very much, Honorable Minister. Please give it up to him and the entire government, the Ministry of Justice, Parliamentary Affairs. It was a very, very difficult process. I'm also very delighted to say that the titles were actually 99-year leases. And now they've turned it into full title deeds. And just a week ago, I had a visitor from your country. The guy runs a farm called Tonga Farms, I think, one of the large, maybe I'm not pronouncing the name, but it's one of the largest farms there. And he said to me, President Adesina, you need to understand this. When we got land titles for the BPAS farmers, it means that our title before, on our balance sheet, the value of the land was zero because there was no title. But today, because we have title, it means that the value of the land is so high. And that is why they are going to be able to raise maybe $8–9 billion as a country. So it's taking a lot of courage, a lot of work. It's my last time as president of the African Development Bank that I'll be speaking on this issue. But I would like to end with three things. First, let us make sure that we appropriately support Zimbabwe to clear the arrears. We've done it for Somalia. We've done it for Sudan. We need $2.6 billion of bridge financing to get that done. Let's get it done. These folks have worked so hard, and we've come this far, and you've heard the testimonies. Let's get it done. And we are in the process of the ADF's 17th replenishment. I would like to urge all of our donors for ADF, the ADF Pillar 2, which is what we use for the arrears clearance process, please help us make sure that we have that so we can support these great guys to do the work. And we've already supported them to have a sovereign finance institution advisory to help on the arrears clearance roadmap and also to help them with the legal issues on it. The second thing that I would like to say is that the work should continue going on. And finally, I may be ending my time as president of the African Development Bank, but I will not, and I will never end my support for Zimbabwe. I know that whoever is my successor will take a baton and continue that particular work. And it's been a great pleasure and a great honor to work with such outstanding people here. Starting from the president to the World Bank, to the IMF, to the Minister of Finance, who did an incredible job, and to all of the members of government, and of course to President Mnangagwa himself. So sorry I took a little bit of time, but it's important for me because it's a very emotive issue for me. I know this nation has huge potential. Chairman here from SADC, SACU receipts going down. We need rail. We need support, opening up mines and all of those things. Zimbabwe is very critical. So we cannot have regional integration in the SADC area without a very, very strong, economically strong Zimbabwe, revitalized Zimbabwe, and a Zimbabwe that is debt-free, and a Zimbabwe that can access capital markets and also concessional financing to go ahead. So please, just rise for 1 minute, 10 seconds. I'm not praying, don't worry. Maybe I should pray, but I don't know. So put your hands with the person next to you because we are doing something together. Please. And just kindly just repeat out. It's like a baobab thing. It's a big thing, but together we can do it. So please just repeat after me. Zimbabwe's challenges. It's like a baobab tree. Put our hands around it. We can manage it. Zimbabwe's economy. It's like a baobab tree. Put our hands together. We'll help them unlock it. Let's get it done. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for that rousing speech, Dr. Deshina. I think, given what Mr. President has just said, the journey has been on with Zimbabwe, where it is right now, the difficult conversations he's been having, and of course, demonstrating his lasting commitment to Zimbabwe deserves another round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. Before I call upon the next speaker, let me just also recognize some of our distinguished guests here, and I'll be doing that as we go along. So if I don't mention you right now, I'll make sure I do so before we end this session. Ambassador of the United Arab Emirates is in the house to Harare. This is Ambassador Dr. Jassim Al-Qasim. Shukran, welcome. And of course, he's sitting to Ambassador Gatete, who was introduced by Dr. Deshina. And next to him is the Vice President for Regional Development, Integration and Business Development, Nena Nabufo. And you heard Munum Potola was mentioned, the Deputy Director General for Southern Africa, pleased and working very hard on the Zimbabwe progress. Okay, so you stand up so that you get another round of applause for doing all the work. We've got the bank's executive directors here with us as well. Let me first recognize E.D. Ngimbi. Louise Ngimbi is in the house with us. We've got Executive Director Fanitsa, please. And I'll continue to introduce more and more distinguished guests. Ladies and gentlemen, at this juncture, may I call upon the Minister for Finance for Zimbabwe, Professor Nkube, to come and give us an update. Of course, he's got a big presentation to do for you. So again, as you did, paying keen attention to Dr. Adeshina, Professor, please, you're most welcome.
Good afternoon, colleagues. First of all, let me recognize former President Chisano, former President of Mozambique, the President of the African Development Bank. He hasn't gone yet, he's still here, Dr. Adeshina. The colleagues are up here and everybody in the audience, bank staff, board members here present, and senior staff from the government of Zimbabwe. I just want to give you an update as to how we've progressed so far on our structured dialogue journey. I hope the slides will show. If they don't show, I'll just speak a cappella. But if they're able to show them, that's okay. Colleagues, I think it's fair to say that really, when it comes to the global economy, things are not as easy or as expected. A lot has happened in the last 4 months, mainly driven by United States protectionist policies, imposing tariffs. Everybody's busy trying to negotiate bilaterally on those tariffs to improve their position. And this will result in a slowdown in the global economy. The prognosis is that it will be as much as 0.5% a slowdown. The reduction in overseas development assistance is not helping either, especially sectors such as health and so forth. And we in Zimbabwe have had to take some action in terms of introducing new taxes for cigarettes, alcohol, drug abuse, in fact, gambling to deal with drug abuse issues. And then we're also keeping our AIDS level, which we started many years ago, which has been very helpful in supporting those who are afflicted by the HIV/AIDS. We've introduced taxes for fast foods. If you buy tacos in Zimbabwe, you will pay a bit more than normal. If you buy fried chicken, the same. So all these taxes are designed to plug the gap that has been created by the reduction in ODA. That's the world we live in. So slower growth, protection policies, everybody's reacting to everybody, and then a lower ODA for countries such as ourselves and others across Africa. The commodity story also is, well, it's not as strong in the sense that once you have a global slowdown, those countries that are exporting hard commodities, such as us in Zimbabwe, will be affected. So hard commodities won't do as well. But we're very pleased with the performance of gold. As they say, if you hear the guns, any guns shots outside, don't think, just buy gold. Don't think too much. And that is true. So we expect to see the gold price to continue doing well as long as there is global turmoil and global uncertainty. When it comes to the domestic economy, we expect that recovery this year, growth at about 6%, up from 2% last year, largely driven by recovery in the agricultural sector. Already in terms of grain output, our second crop assessment is showing that when it comes to cereals, those are up 290% from last year. So that's quite a massive bounce back, largely due to better rains than last year. Because of these new measures we've introduced as well, we're noticing that our revenues are up by 8% in the first quarter. And every month we're seeing an increase in fiscal revenues. This is pleasing. Of course, the moment you talk about increase in fiscal revenues, everyone thinks, oh, that may mean adjustment in salaries. No, we have debts to pay, we have interest charges to service, so it doesn't mean that we have a leeway. As I said earlier, we want to really upscale or rather protect our budget for the health sector through these various taxes, but also want to protect our social protection programs, including the supply of ARVs for those afflicted with HIV AIDS. We continue to maintain our tight fiscal position. Watching the numbers for the last 4 months, we are running a very tight fiscal policy as usual. And also we maintain tight monetary policy to complement tight fiscal policy. Those two work nicely together. So it's not surprising, therefore, to see that the ZiG, the domestic currency, has been stable. The reserves have been growing, which are supporting this currency, and that's commendable. I visited a few companies in Zimbabwe in the last few months, in fact 3 to be precise, and all of them are telling me they've doubled their capacity utilization. There's a shoe company in the Midlands called Bata. It's a Canadian company, actually. They've doubled their capacity utilization in the last couple of months due to currency stability, because there's certainty, they can plan, you can see the positive impact of that stability. I must hasten to say as well that when it comes to the price discovery process, that has continued to improve in terms of the exchange rate discovery process, or a willing buyer, willing seller system. And the impact on inflation has been outstanding. We have seen a sharp drop in month-on-month inflation to 1% and below. Of course, you still have the statistical or base effect from the devaluation of the currency, or depreciation of the currency in September last year. So we see year-on-year inflation, domestic currency, showing high numbers. It's just statistics. The real inflation in the shops, what people are feeling, is far different from that. Looking at the balance of payments position, that again is very healthy. For the 6th year in a row, we expect to record a current account surplus. It's never happened in the history of Zimbabwe to have 6 years in a row of a healthy external balance position. This is driven by growing exports, but also strong remittances. Those two together have resulted in a positive balance of payments position. Looking at our debt position, as you know, some of you are already well aware, our publicly guaranteed debt in total is $21 billion. It's broken down in terms of what we owe to the World Bank. I won't go into the detail as to how much we owe to each party. Just remember that figure of 21 billion, and that's what we're all about. That's what we're trying to deal with. In fact, the external debt is 12.2 billion, while domestic debt is 8.8 billion. Now, I always try to remind the German governors that we are the largest debtor, by the way, our largest creditor. So it's Germany, I won't go into detail with everybody else. Let me then delve straight into the dialogue process. So basically, our debt dialogue process started in December 2022, where President Mnangagwa invited President Chisano to be the high-level facilitator and President Dr. Adeshina to be the champion. And we created 3 working groups, which is Economic Growth and Stability Reforms Group, and then the Governance Reforms Group, and then the Land Tenure Reforms and Compensation of Farm Owners and Resolution of BIPAS Group. And we're proposing the creation of a 4th group now to really focus on the technicalities of arrears clearance. So that's being created. It's in the process of being created. So as to where we are now, we've made a lot of progress across all the 3 buckets. Let me highlight a few things about the economic pillar, the economic reforms pillar, which is co-chaired by the World Bank, the IMF, and Treasury. Dr. Adeshina mentioned to you, we have managed to transfer all the quasi-fiscal obligations from the central bank to our Treasury. And also Treasury has pledged successfully that it will never utilize the overdraft window at the central bank. Central government must live within its means. We cannot be printing money to pay wages as was the case before. So this has been a major improvement indeed. We've also introduced a willing buyer, willing seller system and improved the price discovery process for our currency. We've also resumed the token payments to our creditors, both the preferred, the IFIs, as well as the Paris Club creditors. If anyone is not receiving payment, please let me know you ought to receive payment. And then we exercise enormous fiscal prudence. Colleagues, I can assure you that our target budget deficit to GDP ratio this year is 0.4%. We are going to achieve that. We're very serious. And then there's a lot of, I call it the plumbing, fixing the plumbing within government. We've done a lot. We now have right through government an internal audit department. Imagine a government with an internal audit department like a company. We know how to do that. If anyone wants help, for our member countries want help, we're happy to do that. We've really done a lot. We've even got an enterprise risk framework. So Treasury is training all the ministries in Zimbabwe on the risks that they face and how they ought to mitigate against those risks. The same way that a company would have an enterprise risk management framework where we're doing all of that. We've also introduced what you call ministerial boards. If you recall, most of the former British colonies, the head of government, of the ministry, what's called the accounting officer, is the permanent secretary. And often you find that the policymakers or the ministers, then the engagement is not as smooth. So we've dealt with that. We've introduced, just like the UK government, what you call ministerial boards, which involves the minister, deputy minister, permanent secretary, and I'm insisting that every ministry must produce minutes of those meetings and they should be handed over to the president. So we're doing a lot of just changing the plumbing of how government works as part of that organizational change agenda. I've talked about the new revenue measures we've introduced. I won't say much about that. On the social front, we have a successful project where we're trying to establish a single social registry to support our social protection program. This is an integrated social protection management information system. We're piloting it in 9 districts so far, and it's going to upscale to the rest of the country. I now turn to the next pillar, which is the governance pillar. I must say here, Dr. Adesina did mention that we've got 16 indicators that we've been following, coming from the Mo Ibrahim Index, World Justice Project Index, and Transparency International Index, and so forth. So we've done well in some of the indicators and also well in others. But what I'm happy to report, and the Permanent Secretary for Justice can confirm, that there is clear activity that can be mapped onto each indicator. I must hasten to say that this sector working group is co-chaired by Ambassador Jobst van Kechman, the Office of the President Cabinet. I see Deputy Secretary Manungo there. And then, wrong, he's land. You are chairing that jointly with the Minister of Justice, represented by the Permanent Secretary here. I'll come to land in a minute. So that's happening. We've got that mapping of activity to the targets. But also a lot has been done as well in terms of other things. Some of you may recall something called the Moklante Commission report. We've done a lot going back, far back as 2018 in terms of reforms. You remember that there was a POSA Act and so forth. And then we've managed to, then AIPA, all those have been reformed. As well, we have responded and introduced the Independence Complaints Commission bill. We've introduced a child protection bill. We've introduced a whistleblowers bill, an anti-corruption amendment bill, and assets and conflict of interest bill. And finally, we've removed the death penalty. There's no more death penalties, but we've done a lot in the last 5 or so years. And there's better access to justice. We've introduced an e-court system. My lawyer says to me, he says, I have to do some e-filing. Minister, you have to defend yourself against somebody. I have to do some e-filing. I say, what's that? He says, now we have to, normal paperwork, everything submitted electronically. I said, oh, okay. There's also the integrated electronic case management system, as I say, and then we have got the courts that are being built right across the country to make sure there's better justice, better access to justice. The private voluntary organization PVO bill was accepted by the president, and we've said that, look, if there are any issues in there that need refinement, we'll always stand ready as a government to refine those issues to make sure that the bill is designed to do what it is supposed to do, and nothing more. Let me turn to the land tenure reforms pillar, which is co-chaired by the Ambassador of Switzerland, Ambassador Ray, and then Deputy Chief Secretary Manungo, and UNDP. Three things have happened here. The first thing is that the compensation for Zimbabwe farmers has begun. This is a $3.5 billion deal, what we call the global compensation deed. That has begun. You listen to the video. This has been hard work, I can tell you. Then also the compensation of the beef farmers has also begun. We paid the first 20 million last year, or rather into 2024, and again by December we'll have paid the 20 million that is due this year. So that is continuing, and as we vet more farmers, more resources will be applied. I'm aware that on the global compensation deed, some farmers, they were interviewed in some media, they're unhappy about the deal and so forth. Colleagues, this is voluntary. This is voluntary. No one is forced to accept government's offer. So those who have agreed are receiving compensation. Those who obviously have not are not receiving compensation. We've been very clear on that. We're also aware that the group sometimes they argue among themselves within their own. We cannot really be party to the internal squabbles, but we're always happy to listen. Our door is open to listen. If we need to fine-tune something, we're happy to fine-tune. I just wanted to be clear that this is not a compulsory process. It is a voluntary process. The third thing that we've done under land, Dr. Adeshina has explained, is introduce full title deeds. Full title deeds, and we've assured everybody that once your land has been properly surveyed, confirmed, the title deeds will be issued within 3 days. And we're able to do that because it's an automated system that we're using. We want to move really fast on this. Now, the value of the land, Dr. Adeshina did mention that is billions. We did a quick valuation of that land. It varies from something like 3 cents per square meter to as much as 10 cents per square meter, depending on where the farm is located. So average, it's 6 cents per square meter. So it's 6 cents per square meter for the amount of land in question, farmland. That value is easily 15 billion Zimbabwe dollars, which was missing in the economic metric that Dr. Adeshina has explained. So we will see quite an uplift in value and size of the economy going forward. Let me speed up. Right.
So how much is that in US dollars?
Oh, this is US dollars.
Oh, that's what you said.
Oh, this is 15 billion US dollars, okay, right, which is missing in Zimbabwe's economic calculation, right, and it's just being re-injected. So as we sell more of the land, or as those who are taking up these title deeds do so, that value is being transferred into the economic calculation as we do that. Now, in terms of let me just say the next steps. I've talked about what we are doing in the 3 pillars, and that one introduce a 4th pillar, which is about the actual mechanics of arrears clearance. We're at a critical step now under the economic pillar where we're in discussions with the IMF to get onto a staff-monitored program. We're very close to that. We're expecting a mission from the IMF in the first week of June, or basically next week, to hopefully we conclude. And our expectation is that the SMP program would start on the 1st of July, run for 9 months with quarterly assessments. Hopefully we're successful with that. Once that happens, then we'll be able to, but during that time, we want to, again, identify sponsors who can give us a bridge financing so that we are then able to clear those arrears. We expect, not just one, it's a big sum of money that we need, 2.5 billion. We need maybe 2 or 3 sponsors to come on board. So we'll work on that as we work our way through the staff monitored program. We've already approached a few creditors, Paris Club creditors, in this regard. We're in conversation with them. Now, once we clear the IFI arrears, the World Bank, AFDB, European Investment Bank, those 3, then I think we'll be able to move to phase 2, which is be part of the G20 common framework, as well as restructure with the Paris Club creditors, and then hopefully transition then to the IMF upper credit tranche quality program. As we do that, that will really complete the arrears clearance process. Almost there. I won't go into the benefits of being part of the staff, of taking on a staff monitored program. This is well known. I did say that we hope to start on the 1st of July. So colleagues, here we are. That's the roadmap. If all goes well, our expectation is that the 4th quarter of 2026, we should have made a lot of progress and be closer to clearing our arrears. But much depends on our identification of sponsors once we have successfully completed the first phase, having cleared the IFI debt, as well as successful negotiation for an upper credit tranche program of the IMF. I'll stop here for now. I'm sure we have lots of Q&A after this. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Professor Nkube, Minister for Finance, for Zimbabwe, for that update, and also for giving us the roadmap and the next steps in this process. And I think that for what you've done, we'll also give you another round of applause, please, if you don't mind, ladies and gentlemen. Just before I call upon the next speakers, of course, they are heading various working groups. Let me recognize in the room, we've got the executive, of course, Secretary of SADC. I know Dr. Deshan had mentioned his name. Elias Magosi is here. From the African Development Bank, the Chief Economist and Vice President for Economic Governance and Knowledge Management, Professor Kevin Orama Chika is here. Kevin Chikorama, yes, is here. We've got the Director General of Southern Africa from the bank, Kennedy Mbekani, please. Because again, that right at the back there, thank you so much. We've got from the Zimbabwe government, we've got William Manungo, the Deputy Chief Secretary, Office of the President and Cabinet. If you are here, Mr. Manungo, thank you so much. We've got Mrs. Vimbai Nyemba, Permanent Secretary for Justice in the government of Zimbabwe. And we've got Andrew Vumbe, Permanent Secretary and Head of Debt Management. Yeah, I can see where the hair has gone to. Okay, very well, ladies and gentlemen, let's go on with our next speeches. May I call upon the first co-chair to speak to us is Enaida Fernandez from the World Bank, but the co-chair of the economic sector. Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon. His Excellency, former President Chisano, President Adesina, everybody here, I will just write on the protocols observed. I think that both the President Adesina and the Minister of Finance have talked a lot about some of the progress that we had, but I really would like to start by congratulating the government on the commitment and efforts put forward towards this arrear and debt resolution process, in particular on the pillar that I co-chair with the IMF, the economic pillar, and in implementing notable and very difficult reforms under this pillar. So a couple of key progress points that I would like to reflect on is first the decision to terminate the quasi-fiscal operations and Treasury's assumption of the responsibility for all RBZ's external liabilities, which has enabled the Reserve Bank to focus its efforts on stabilizing monetary and exchange rate policy. The government has also ensured lower inflation by introducing the Zimbabwe gold currency, which has led to improved monetary and exchange rate stability in Zimbabwe. The Treasury has enhanced tax collection and is currently engaged in a comprehensive program to further enhance its domestic revenue mobilization. And we're also very encouraged and commend the government on the recent critical reform in which it removed official exchange rate controls by repealing the statutory instrument SI 81 that required businesses to only use official exchange rate. This reform was very welcome by all, in principle by the private sector. However, we note that increased debt servicing costs, including raising wage bills, are elevating these fiscal burdens, and it really underscores the need to create fiscal space through both additional domestic revenue mobilization, expenditure rationalization to service debt in a non-inflationary manner. Additional efforts are also still necessary to establish a competitive foreign exchange rate regime, which is one of the main actions under the economic pillar for arrears clearance. It is, however, very encouraging to see the ongoing discussions with the IMF regarding the staff monitored program. An S&P would provide an effective tool to assist in implementing these economic reforms, enhancing the credibility of Zimbabwe's economic programs and re-anchoring economic stability. The successful implementation of an S&P program would also create the pathway to arrears clearance and debt resolution. However, the economic adjustments that will be required under this ambitious economic reforms program linked to the S&P are very necessary to stabilize the economy, but they're not without sacrifices. So to create the necessary fiscal space, the government will have to make difficult decisions on spending, cuts, and raising domestic taxes. And unfortunately, sometimes these decisions do disproportionately impact the poor. So we are very happy to see the progress in the implementation of the National Social Registry, ZISO, which is a robust program that will allow ministries and us development partners to coordinate and target assistance to the most vulnerable in society in key sectors such as education, health, food security, social protection, and climate change. Ladies and gentlemen, the World Bank is engaged in this process and aims to fully re-engage in Zimbabwe and to provide the government with the necessary concessional financing to help accelerate growth and poverty reduction in line with the World Bank's vision of a world free of poverty and a livable planet. However, we would like to reinforce that progress under each of the three pillars of the structured dialogue for arrears clearance is critical to realize this. We therefore urge the government to continue and reinforce the commitment that it's been having to each of these pillars. The World Bank is committed to support the government and its initiatives and will continue to assist Zimbabwe with the reforms agreed through the dialogue platform. We remain engaged in partnering with government, the International Monetary Fund, the co-chairs of the governance and land pillars with us today, the European Union, Switzerland, and all other bilateral partners. We look forward to implementing these key reforms leading to clearing multilateral arrears and eventually restructuring Zimbabwe's debt. Full re-engagement will encourage public and private investments, bolster economic growth, and facilitate swift progress towards Zimbabwe's Vision 2030 to achieve rapid growth and poverty reduction. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Enaida Fernandez, for that. May I call upon Ambassador Jobs von Kachman, is the European Ambassador to Zimbabwe and co-chairs the Governance Sector Working Group.
Thank you very much, Master of Ceremonies. Let me recognize former President of the Republic of Mozambique, Dr. Joachim Chissano, the President of the African Development Bank Group and champion of Zimbabwe's arrears clearance and debt resolution process, Dr. Akivumi Adesina, and Honorable Minister Mithuli Ncube, Minister of Finance, Economic Development and Investment Promotion of Zimbabwe, and of course my co-chairs. All of you who are here, I will write on the protocols because we have a limited time. President Adesina said he's full of emotions. I can tell I'm also full of emotions because I think we have gone a long way. We've come a long way. We started this process in October 2022, and we have tirelessly worked together with the government of Zimbabwe, with the African Development Bank, with President Chissano, with the stakeholders to move forward. And I think what we see today is not the end of the road. It's not the end, but we have moved forward. And I think this is something which I would like you to recognize with a little applause, because it's hard work. Now, when I was preparing myself, I was thinking with what could I compare an arrears clearance process. And as we are living in Africa, I was thinking of a bushwalk. A long bushwalk. When you go on a bushwalk, it's not a straight line. You are not, I'm German, you're not on a German motorway. Yeah? You go a bit to the left and the right, and you try to find the way which always brings you forward. You never lose sight of where you want to go, but it's not a straight way. And the second thing when you go on a bushwalk is you have to be well equipped. You have to have the right clothes, you have to have maybe a sun cream and water and a knife and whatever you need on that bushwalk. So when His Excellency President Mnangagwa launched this process, he sent us on a bushwalk. The government, together with the creditors, together with the champions and the facilitators. And here we are with 3 tracks. We are 3 teams. But when we walk, at the end, we have all to arrive there. Not one of us only, all 3 have to arrive there. The economic one, the land one, and the good governance one. Now, ladies and gentlemen, let me talk about, are we equipped for this bushwalk? In good governance, because that is the team I'm co-chairing with my co-chair, the Permanent Secretary, Wim Banyembe, who is here. We are leading the pack on that bushwalk. Are we well equipped? I say yes, we are well equipped. Because the good governance track, like the entire arrears clearance track, is a government-led process. It's not led by us, the creditors. And when I look at good governance, it is not that we as creditors came and said, you government, you have to do. No. The government is using the National Development Strategy 1 and saying, we in our own strategy, we have planned to do certain things, and in our own strategy, we have used indicators to measure progress. These are the famous indicators we were talking about. 16 key indicators. That's a very good choice, because the government lives up to the idea. You're a sovereign country and you own this process. And secondly, having objectively verifiable indicators avoids the discussion to say, We as stakeholders think you haven't done that, and you say, no, I have done it. It avoids that discussion, because neither you nor us, we can influence these indicators. They are published, and they are in the National Development Strategy. So we are well equipped for this bushwalk. It's a good process. And let me add as well, by looking at the civil society here present, it is an inclusive process, and I think that's also important. We are sitting together, we are discussing, we have working groups for the different pillars under good governance, and we are discussing. So it's a good process. So where did we move in the last 2.5 years? Now here I must say, you know, when you go on a bushwalk, sometimes you have dangerous animals, and then you have lions and elephants and snakes, and you have to turn a bit back. I would say we have seen a lot of dangerous animals on that walk on good governance, but still, we are moving forward. And I think that's very important. So out of the 16 indicators, the government has improved 7. And I would like outline one, which is public procurement, where I think you have increased by a factor of 300% the score. And I would like that we applaud the government for that. But there are also other indicators, 9, where compared with the baseline which the government proposed in the National Development Strategy and also in this process, it went down. Now, I will not use all 9, but I will only take the 5 which have deteriorated the plus. And we call them, they're still on the bushwalk, we call them the big 5. Now, the big 5 are the freedom of assembly, went down by 16.4%. Democratic elections went down by 17.3%. The impartiality of the judicial system went down by 43.6%. The civil society space went down by 46.1%. And the corruption perception index by 12.5%. So these big 5 are the indicators we now focus on. And it is important to showcase for you, the government, to show us what you are going to do in order to improve them. Now, as I said, we should not lose sight where we are going, and we will not. We also know that the way to reach to the end, to a debt resolution and an arrears clearance, is not one which will happen in 6 months' time. We are aware of that. And that's why we very much support what has been put underway, which is a partial clearance of the multilateral creditors, the banks, the African Development Bank, the World Bank, and the European Investment Bank, which I also represent here. Why is that so important? Because that opens the door to sovereign lending, concessional lending potentially, and helps to restructure the debt, as the Minister of Finance was saying as well, and it brings the process forward. It's like a milestone. Like in the middle, we have a nice restaurant we can eat before we go on the rest of this bushwalk. Now, what is needed for that is, of course, an SMP, but it's also progress on good governance. Because the creditors would not move forward if there is not progress on all 3 tracks. And I think that is important to acknowledge. So what can be done in order to move forward now? Of course, we had hoped that the government would not enact the PVO bill. Unfortunately, that was done, and in our bushwalk, I think we walked a couple of kilometers back, but now we have to look forward. And that's why I said we have to look into where we would like to go, reaching arrears clearance and debt resolution. So here, it is important to now have steps which show the commitment of the government to the good governance process. And I must say, last Friday with my co-chair, we had a very successful meeting, And I would like to applaud the government, and in particular my co-chair, because for the first time, the government proposed a matrix which is indicator-driven. What does that mean? Instead of saying we are doing a lot of activities, the government was saying for that indicator, for example, impartiality of the judicial system, we are planning to do ABC. For that indicator, freedom of assembly, we are planning to do ABC. And I think that's a major step forward, because it will allow also the government to have a clearer idea what is needed in order to approve these indicators. Now, what I would like to invite the government is to put a timeline on that, and maybe think as well about things which can be done rapidly. And here, the Ministry of Justice committed itself to meet with civil society before the end of the registration deadline, which is the 11th of July. Is correct? Yeah, the 11th of July. And also to look into how this bill can be implemented without basically putting civil society in a situation where they cannot register. I think that's very important, because some of the organizations have been refused. They are in illegality, and then they would be facing a 2 years prison sentence simply because they couldn't register. I think it's very important. And thanks again, co-chair, for your commitment on that. I also believe it is important to look at all the little activities which are proposed and see what can be done in the next 6 months. The idea is to show that the government has not lost sight of where we want to go in good governance. And I know you have done that on Friday already, but I think now in the coming months, that will be crucial, so that we can say all the 3 tracks, they look forward where we want to go together. Ladies and gentlemen, I think we all agree it's a government process. We will not push you on that, because it's your own process. You should push us. And I think it's also something which I can recommend. Don't hesitate pushing us. We will not push you. But on the other hand, of course, we want you to move forward in that process. So in conclusion, I would like to express my sincere appreciation to all the stakeholders for their commitment and the dialogue which continued now since almost 3 years. We recognize that the path ahead will require a lot of effort from both sides, but we are also committed to reach where we want to reach. And I can talk for the European Union, but also for the creditors at large. We are committed to be at your side, the Zimbabwean government, because we want you to succeed, and we would like, in our bushwalk, to arrive all together and celebrate at the end together. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Van Kutchman, for those words. Let's now move on swiftly to the Ambassador of Switzerland to Zimbabwe. He co-chairs the Land Sector Working Group, Stephen Ray. Thank you.
That was an easy bushwalk. So I'd like to recognize Your Excellency, former President of the Republic of Mozambique, Dr. Chissano, President of the African Development Bank Group and champion of Zimbabwe's arrears clearance and debt resolution process, Dr. Akina Deshina, Honorable Professor Mtuli Ngube, Minister of Finance, Economic Development and Investment Promotion of Zimbabwe, and also acknowledge specifically the presence of Deputy Chief Secretary Manungo, also known as my co-chair, and all protocols observed. Today, I'd like to share a few reflections on the land pillar, and more specifically on the BIPA compensation process, why it matters, what we've achieved together, and what, in my opinion, comes next. So the first thing I'd like to share is that the compensation process has been a process that had to balance law, emotions, and practicality. For Zimbabwe, it was mostly about fulfilling a constitutional obligation to compensate. For the concerned farmers, it was a deeply emotional chapter revisiting displacement and loss. So we had to acknowledge emotions, but at the same time design a practical and workable process. As is the case in all facilitation and mediation processes, we mostly had to inspire trust. So let's look at some of the key design features that built trust. The criteria for compensation were carefully crafted through consensus. First of all, we reached a consensus that we had to commit to full compensation with an initial payment of the same value for all farms. Then we had to design a clear payment timeline, not a one-off payment, but a clear timeline with payments to take place over the next 4 years. We also had to ensure that existing land valuations would be taken into account instead of reinventing the wheel. And those elements were not non-negotiables for farmers and creditors, and my role was to try and make this understood by all. So this approach has led to concrete successes. Today, 85 farms have been compensated with real money in real bank accounts, not all Swiss. As the minister rightly mentioned, the second tranche payout is around the corner, and this will also represent a major milestone. And yes, we have come across a lot of challenges. There were challenges pertaining to foreign exchange control. There was some impatience on the side of the farmers, on the side of the Swiss ambassador. And thank you for accepting to keep me in the country, Honorable Minister, despite all of this. But the government stayed creative, determined, and engaged. And just for 1 second, let's remember that Zimbabwe was going through a year of unprecedented drought. Can you imagine what it took to compensate white farmers in such an environment? It's a historic process, potentially as well the fastest compensation and reparation process in history. So if this is not leadership, what is? So the remaining challenges and next steps. Well, there's a need to further reach out to all relevant farming associations, as the government said they would do. I mean, we need to make sure that consensus is reached on that issue as well, but you know, nothing has to happen in a day. The question of the return of land or bankable transferable leases for BIPA farmers who opted out of compensation also needs to be addressed as per the objectives set forth by the government. And here again, we are ready to support Zimbabwe in addressing these issues. On the question of land tenure and investor confidence, it's a firm belief that stronger land systems will lead to more investor confidence. And important next steps include the design of registries, loan structures, the role of banks in agri-investment. These are open questions, and we are also happy to help if needed. I'd like to echo the EU ambassador when he says that governance matters and that the interplay between all three pillars will be key. Switzerland is already supporting Zimbabwe in the second phase of the abolition of the death penalty, moving to resentencing and rehabilitation, these will also provide valuable progress indicators, even though they're not among the big five. They're also important fundamentals in moving forward. We are also working on national reconciliation at the request of the President, like helping the National Chiefs Council find a solution in the southern provinces of the country. But we've seen genuine effort, and we're ready to do more if and when requested. In closing, this BPAS scheme is proof that with ownership, trust, and determination, complex issues can be addressed constructively. So it has been a big step forward for justice, for confidence, and for Zimbabwe's future. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you so much for that, Ambassador. He said it was a short bushwalk, and I don't know whether there were any lions or snakes. I think it was a smooth one, isn't it? Excellent. Thank you so much for that. Ladies and gentlemen, we've heard from our chief guests here, and now I would like to invite a few comments you're going to hear now from a farmer. Andrew Pasco is going to speak to us, followed by an investor who will also speak to us, Lisa Nishlev. But before they come to the stage, I would like to just recognize a few more dignitaries here. We've got Dr. John Mshawanyu, Reserve Bank Governor of Zimbabwe. Where are you? Yes, thank you. Thank you so much for that. Let me recognize also the Zimbabwean ambassador to Cote d'Ivoire, Liberia, Togo, Sierra Leone, Ghana, and Liberia. That is Kufa Chinoza. Thank you so much. And lastly, the private sector is here. So we've got Mrs. Sekai Kubarika, Chief Executive of the Confederation of Zimbabwe Industries. And as we heard also, the civil society are in the house. If you just can wave if you're wherever you are, that would be fantastic. Thank you so much from the civil society. So let us start with, Andrew, you are waving to me that you start with Lisa, but I think, okay, come, okay, an investor here, Lisa Nishlev, please. Thank you.
Your Excellency, Honourable Ministers, Chairman, Co-Chairs, I'm renowned for breaking protocols. I apologize in advance for not greeting everybody correctly. This is a momentous day for me. It's been a roller coaster of emotions. 23 years ago, exactly today, I drove off the farm. I had not been allowed back in the house to collect anything, passport at all. I went back a few years later. That was for my husband to propose to me on the land. We were obviously arrested, but that's another fun story. My phone has had to be recharged twice today for the numerous WhatsApp messages that have been coming through. One was from Tendai saying, "Thank you, Mama. My exams went well." Tendai is the grandchild of a former farm worker who I support going through school. Another one came through. "Lisa, what seed varieties are you recommending for looking at this year's crops?" My heart maintains its beat with Zimbabwe. I would like to thank the government of Zimbabwe from all my heart for extending a hand of reconciliation. It has not been easy. And there's so many in this room that have worked tirelessly to help achieve that. It is a momentous thing how it's been done. Thank you. When the first payment came through, the messages on our WhatsApp group were very, very emotional. And I really wanted to share a few of them with you. First one was, "It's very hard to share the incredible emotions of partial justice after 23 years. At least the start of reconciliation, which has a far greater impact, interestingly, on closure. There's so many to thank. Thank you." A school friend sitting on the beach on the WhatsApp video, crying so hard, saying, I wish my father would have been here. He would have been so pleased to see today." The stork has brought me a precious parcel. My father always said a stork brings good news. A very emotional moment telling my wife that the funds had been received by the bank. Today, the buckets in my house are not collecting rain, but tears of gratitude. And finally, my payment came through. It's taking time to sink in. I can't quite believe it, sitting in front of the graves and telling my parents, Tatenda, Tatenda, Zimbabwe, Tatenda. I'd like to end by paraphrasing Nelson Mandela. It is in your hands to make a better Zimbabwe for all who live in it. Thank you, sir.
I think the word emotional roller coaster was used here earlier on, and I think it was an accurate description of what exactly we are experiencing here, and we've been hearing from all our speakers, and driven home a very powerful message by Lisa here, living the experience. Let's give another round of applause. And to all those who sent you messages, thank you, Mr. President. That is what peace does. That is what reconciliation does. Now let's hear from a farmer, Andrew Pascoe, please. Let's give a round of applause to welcome you to the stage.
Your Excellencies, Honourable Governors and Ministers, ladies and gentlemen, for the sake of time, please allow me to say all protocols observed. I am deeply honoured to be able to address you this afternoon on behalf of those former farm owners in Zimbabwe who have signed up to receive the compensation being offered by the government for improvements on their farms which were required for resettlement. I would like here to briefly relate my journey through the compensation process and give a little background to the current situation. My part began in 2017, when as the Commercial Farmers Union Vice President, I was invited by the then Chairman of the Compensation Steering Committee, or CSC for short, the late Mr. John Laurie, to join his negotiating team. The original CSC was an independent body set up by Mr. Laurie along with other pragmatic and forward-thinking individuals who were doing all in their power to see that farm compensation became a reality. Once it became obvious that progress was beginning to be made, the CSC received mandates from the Commercial Farmers Union, the CFU, and the Southern African Confederation of Agricultural Associations, SACFA for short, the two main farmer representative organizations in Zimbabwe. His Excellency, Dr. Edie Mnangagwa, had recently become president, and doors which had hitherto been tightly closed began to open, and negotiations became a reality and finally led to the signing of the Global Compensation Deed on the 29th of July, 2020. I have been deeply involved in this process for the last 8 years, 1 year as the CFU Vice President, 5 years as the CFU President, and the last 2 years as Chairman of the Compensation Steering Committee, the position which I currently hold. During this time, I have had the privilege of being able to build relationships across the board, from the lowest ranking government officials to the highest office in the land, and every level in between. From war veterans to resettled farmers to academics and senior politicians. And from these relationships, and interactions, I have gained a much deeper understanding of the conflicts, the complexities, and the economic implications surrounding land reform and the payment of compensation. Moving on, I would like to give a little background to the current situation regarding compensation for the former farm owners. On the 29th of July 2020 at State House in Harare, when I signed the GCD on behalf of former farm owners, I highlighted the enormity of the achievement that it was. After almost 20 years, we as Zimbabweans had been able to put aside our differences and in an atmosphere of mutual respect and trust, negotiate an agreement that laid the foundation for the payment of compensation for improvements on farms, which had been acquired by the government under the fast-track land reform program. Compensation payments, as agreed under the terms of the GCD, were always going to be dependent on debt arrears clearance and Zimbabwe's ability to access foreign funding. Unfortunately, for many reasons, this process has been delayed and affected the government's ability to meet its commitments. Despite the enormous efforts of the Joint Resource Mobilization Committee, which was formed by the government in August 2020 to mobilize funding for the GCD, and the numerous meetings which were held with the technical assistance of the World Bank, the government was not able to raise the required funding to meet the payment terms of the GCD. And on the 29th of July 2022, 2 years after the signing of the Global Compensation Deed, and on the date that the first payments under the GCD were due, a completely unacceptable compensation payment offer was presented to farmers in the form of a 20-year US dollar-denominated Zimbabwe government treasury bond with a 1% coupon rate. This offer was rejected outright and was followed by many months of negotiations between the Compensation Steering Committee and our Honourable Minister of Finance, until finally in March 2023, the Honourable Minister presented what he described as the best offer for payment of compensation that he was able to make, given the tight fiscal space, the liquidity challenges, and the fact that Zimbabwe cannot access international capital markets. This offer was put to farmers in a non-binding, no-obligation survey in April of 2023. This survey was unfortunately poorly responded to, but it did, however, show that of those who responded, slightly less than half were willing to accept the government's offer. Given the fact that there was not a majority support for this offer, the Global Compensation Deed route to compensation hit a major roadblock, which more than 2 years later still has not been removed. In May 2023, in a meeting with the Honourable Minister, he was advised of the results of the survey and its implications for the GCD. It was at this meeting that the Honourable Minister made it abundantly clear to us that his hands were tied and there was no alternative, and either we accepted his offer or walk away with nothing. It was also at this meeting that the idea of drafting a separate agreement for individual farmers who wished to accept the government's compensation offer was first mooted. The Compensation Steering Committee immediately began work on making sure that what is now known as the Farm Compensation Agreement, or FCA for short, has become a reality. This agreement takes its values from those originally agreed under the terms of the GCD, but it replaces the GDC payment terms with slightly modified terms from those presented to farmers in March 2023. In addition, unlike the GCD, which was a global agreement encompassing all former farm owners, it is an agreement between the minister and each individual farmer who chooses to accept the compensation being offered. The new payment terms consist of a 1% upfront capital payment in US dollars and US dollar-denominated Zimbabwe government treasury bonds with maturities ranging from 1 year to 10 years from the date of issue, and with a coupon rate of 2% with interest paid twice annually. After changes in the leadership of the CFU, they chose a path that was strongly opposed to the FCA. And as a result, a decision was taken to form a new association which would represent those farmers who wished to accept the government's offer. And thus, the Property and Farm Compensation Association, or PROFCA for short, was formed on the 29th of September 2023. A constitution was adopted and an executive committee set up to steer the course of the association. And the membership consists of all those who have signed up to accept the government's 2023 compensation offer through the FCA, the Farm Compensation Agreement. 20 months have passed since the formation of PROFCA, and whilst it has been a long and often frustrating journey, thanks to the support of legal and corporate services professionals who have given of their time and services without remuneration until the farmers are paid, we now have a solid legal agreement which protects individual farmers. We have an electronic portal which allows farmers wherever they are in the world to register and upload all the required documentation to validate their compensation claims. It also allows the Zimbabwe government officials to access the information and documentation they require to validate and approve claims to the satisfaction of all government processes. This, once again, is a heartening demonstration of Zimbabweans working together, not for financial gain, but for the good of our beloved Zimbabwe, to do what we can to remove what has been an albatross around our necks. To date, 977 applications for compensation have been received, which represents close to 25% of the properties registered on the Valuation Consortium's database. Of those 977 applicants, 378 have received their 1% upfront capital payments in real money, in real bank accounts, to borrow a phrase from the Swiss ambassador. They have also received their treasury bonds. The messages of gratitude which we have received from farmers all over the world have been overwhelming and kind of echo a little bit of what Lisa was saying to us earlier. For many who had given up hope of ever receiving anything, these payments are a lifeline. The next batch of 327 applicants has gone through all the approvals and is currently waiting release of the 1% upfront cash payment, after which the treasury bonds will be issued. The remaining 272 applications are at various stages of the registration process. Your Excellencies, Honourable Governors and Ministers, ladies and gentlemen, I have taken time to explain this process and belabored these points because the compensation process does face some challenges which need to be addressed. At this stage, only around 25% of farmers have applied for the compensation offer. Many of those who have not applied are holding on to assurances being made by the new CFU leadership that they will negotiate improved payment terms under the Global Compensation Deed. Whilst our Honourable Minister of Finance made it abundantly clear in 2023 that the payment plan which he presented to us was the best he could offer, and it was either take it or walk away with nothing. Unless something has changed since then, it is incumbent upon you, Honourable Minister, to make this position very clear to all stakeholders. In addition, a large number of those who have not applied cite a lack of trust in the government's ability to honour the treasury bonds as the main reason for not applying. And this is where I believe our development partners and the international finance institutions could play an important role. If a mechanism could be negotiated between the Zimbabwe government and our development partners, which would put in place an international guarantee of the compensation treasury bonds, there would be an immediate and massive change to their value, tradability, and appeal as a mechanism for settling the compensation liability. And I have no doubt that we would see a majority of former farm owners signing up to accept the compensation offer. I firmly believe that the government of Zimbabwe has gone the extra mile in trying to accommodate the former farm owners and will do their utmost to honor the FCA. In addition, we now have a system in place that works so that any former farm owner, wherever he may be in the world, can complete the registration and approval processes and receive the compensation being offered. Given the historical conflict over land, the political and economic realities facing Zimbabwe, I firmly believe that the process of compensating farmers through the Farm Compensation Agreement under the auspices of PROFCA, which has already been successfully implemented and seen the first batches of farmers receiving both their cash payments and their treasury bonds, is the best way forward for the payment of compensation for improvements and deserves the full support of all stakeholders. It is time for us as Zimbabweans to put the past behind us and move forward, but we can only do this with your support. And so today I appeal to you to do all in your power to help us succeed. Your Excellencies, Honourable Governors, Ministers, ladies and gentlemen, I thank you. May God bless you. May God bless Zimbabwe.
Thank you so much for that, Andrew, and for your feedback as well. I know we've run out of time because, as you can see, we are nearly 20 or so minutes away from the target, and many people are beginning to go into other commitments. I don't want to hold you for long. So if I may seek your indulgence for us to move on to the next stage, we want to listen to comments from the facilitator of this process. I will also deliver closing remarks, just so that we finish at least on time a little bit, because if we open this right now, we'll be here beyond the stipulated time. So, ladies and gentlemen, before I call former President, His Excellency Chisano, to deliver his speech, I was notified of another important guest who's just joined us. Or sorry if you are in the house, we didn't recognize you at that time, and that's Mr. Lawrence Nyanzema, the chairperson of Zimbabwe Bankers Association. Where are we? Are you here? Thank you so much. So we've heard from Andrew, a farmer. We've heard from Lisa, an investor. We've had comments from Stephen Ray from Switzerland and co-chair of the Land Sector Working Group. We've heard from Ambassador Van Kochman, who is also the co-chair of the Governance Sector Working Group. We've heard from Ines Fernandez, the co-chair of the Economic Sector Working Group. Earlier on, we heard from Dr. Adeshina, who is the champion of the Zimbabwe Arrears Clearance Debt Resolution Process. And then we had a good presentation from the Minister for Finance, Economic Development and Investment Promotion, Professor Mtuli Kube. So it's now right time for us to bring in or to tap into the fountain of wisdom by inviting the facilitator, Your Excellency Joachim Chisano. Let's give him a round of applause, please. Thank you, Sana. I know you're a good Kiswahili speaker, so I will say karibu sana. Yes, asante sana.
Honorable Professor Mtuli Kube, Minister of Finance, Economic Development and Investment Promotion of Zimbabwe, Mrs. Mary Laure Akin Alubade, Senior Vice President of the African Development Bank Group, all protocol observed. I am honored to address you this afternoon in my capacity as the facilitator of Zimbabwe's arrears clearance and debt resolution process. I do so in this August occasion as we take stock of the progress we have made over the past few years in the dialogue process. We have embarked on a remarkable process of dialogue, initiated and led by the government of Zimbabwe, in which all stakeholders have been able to come together and work collectively towards Zimbabwe's arrears, clearance, and debt resolution. Allow me, therefore, to recognize the strong commitment and leadership of His Excellency Emmerson Dambuzu Mnangagwa, President of the Republic of Zimbabwe. His commitment and that of his government have been exemplary and unwavering throughout the process. Let me also recognize the champion, Dr. Aki Nyume Adesina, for his exceptional dedication and leadership during the process. Now, Dr. Adesina said here that he was emotioned because he lived in Zimbabwe. I would say that I'm emotioned because I saw all steps of the beginning of this problem. Many of you speak about this problem from this century onward. We started witnessing the problems when we were fighting for the struggle, for the independence of our countries in Southern Africa. And we heard our comrades, Zimbabweans, repeating that word of whites and that word of land. Whites, land. We in Mozambique, we didn't use those terminologies. We were speaking about freedom only, not whites and land. Today I'm emotioned when I hear these whites saying, we, the Zimbabweans. We, the Zimbabweans. We, the Zimbabweans. And I remembered receiving that delegation of whites in Maputo who came to see me and say, President, please help us because we're mistaken. But now we're clear. We did not see that we were going away. Now we recognize that we are Zimbabweans. But now, the other Zimbabweans don't trust us. Come with us, take us to see Mugabe. We want to talk to him. As Zimbabweans, we want to tell him that, sorry, now we recognize they were Zimbabweans. Well, I started that process, but I knew that it would be long. But today I'm emotioned to see this meeting, the way it is running. I feel that Zimbabweans are talking to each other. And I was encouraged by the Swiss ambassador when he said that they are trying to think about this question of reconciliation, not only among the black and whites government and old farmers, but also among the black Zimbabweans, because we know that there were problems. And so I'm emotioned to hear this word reconciliation being repeated, I believe, by both sides, by everybody, by all sides. I'm emotioned also because while many of you sitting there think that we are discussing here the problems of Zimbabwe, I don't feel like that. I feel that we are here discussing about the problems of Southern Africa. Zimbabwe is a country which matters when we speak about Southern Africa. So we, particularly in Mozambique, we know that stability of Southern Africa requires a stable and prosperous Zimbabwe. We know of the talents which exist in Zimbabwe, which can transform. It's not by chance that we started this process with some fear, with a lot of mistrust, with a lot of negativity. But because there are talents in Zimbabwe, and I now discovered that both among blacks and whites, there are talents who see the problem and know how to solve problems. I trust that President Mnangagwa and his government know the problems of the people, and they are keen to solve the problems of the people, and the people of Zimbabwe and the people of Southern Africa. This is what brings emotion to me. But let me put a bit aside these emotions and read what they said that I should read. Ladies and gentlemen, as the facilitator of the dialogue process, I have been tasked with the engagement of the government of Zimbabwe and its creditors, development partners, and other stakeholders. My work and that of my team has been building bridges and finding common ground for a more fruitful relationship between Zimbabwe and its partners, and we are getting it. This process has been quite successful, as now the dialogue process is deep-rooted. Through the dialogue process, a number of meaningful commitments and compromises have been made. We were able to build increasing levels of mutual trust and confidence, as well as arrive at a consensus on a package of reforms. We can safely say that Zimbabwe and its partners are effectively engaged in a dialogue and working together for arrears clearance and debt resolution. Creditors and development partners, the private sector and civil society organizations have all shown their continued commitment to this process. This underscores the shared commitment of all stakeholders to the dialogue process and its desired outcome. Ladies and gentlemen, the Honorable Minister has already outlined the status of the progress achieved so far. He has also highlighted some of the challenges that need to be tackled. Overall, tremendous progress has been achieved in the dialogue. This makes me say with great confidence that there is light at the end of the tunnel. When we started, I believed that that light would come. That's why I spoke about the need of patience. Patience. and hope. We must first recognize the commendable progress achieved on the issues of land tenure and compensation of farm owners. The issue of land has been the genesis and at the nerve center of all that has happened in Zimbabwe, as I've just said. Politically, this has been the crux of the matter and was viewed as the most difficult, if not impossible, to address. However, Zimbabwe has proved all of us wrong. Thank God. This is witnessing in a stronger way. Andrew is here witnessing in a stronger way the video which we saw in a stronger way. So I myself get inspired to continue with this process. Today, land tenure has been sorted out with the introduction of land title deeds that are commercially viable, transferable, and bankable. Look at this. Mozambique must learn from Zimbabwe. Land tenure. We had an approach in Mozambique that many in Africa would like to emulate. But only now that we are thinking in terms of reaching what Zimbabwe is reaching today. Congratulations, Minister. Commercially viable, transferable, and bankable. So it's more than that compensation. Because now that you are all together in Zimbabwe, for the interests of Zimbabwe, you put this land at the service of the people of Zimbabwe. You will contribute because you know how to make money out of land. And the compensation of former farm owners, be it under BPAS or under the Global Compensation Deed, is a reality and ongoing. Today, representatives of former farm owners and ambassadors of BPAS affected countries have spoken, bearing witness to the positive outcome. With these bold decisions and actions, His Excellency President Mnangagwa and his government have shown their firm commitment to achieving arrears, clearance, and debt resolution, as well as bring Zimbabwe back to the concert of nations. There is no question that excellent progress has been made on the economic reforms. We almost ticked all the boxes as far as the required reforms are concerned. However, we are yet to score goal. We need to finalize the negotiations and sign the SMP, a framework that will anchor all the economic reforms. Progress on governance reforms has also been notable on several fronts. We have been able to agree on a set of reform indicators for this pillar, as well as the yardsticks to measure progress in the implementation of the agreed reforms. However, we must recognize that the latest assessment has indicated that performance in some indicators is below the desired parameters, as it has been stated before me here. One issue that has overshadowed performance in the governance pillar is the problematic civil society organizations space. The recent enacting of the Private Voluntary Organizations Amendment Act has added to this drama. I am comforted by the Honorable Minister of Finance, who has indicated that this act is not yet in force. We encourage both the government and the civil society organizations to continue their dialogue towards finding a legislation that is agreeable to all parties. Ladies and gentlemen, the dialogue process has been successful in agreeing on a set of consensual reforms. Progress in the implementation of these reforms should be balanced. We must ensure that it happens in all three pillars of economic reforms, governance reforms, as well as land tenure and compensation of former farm owners. As implementation on governance reforms is lagging behind, work must be done to reverse this situation. Therefore, decisive actions should be taken to address the few aspects of governance reforms that keep overshadowing the good work being done. In particular, it is critical that efforts are directed to reversing the trend of the key governance indicators, such as democratic elections, freedom of expression and association, civic space, impartiality of the judiciary, and corruption that have been performing in a disappointing fashion. I call upon development partners to support Zimbabwe to reach the good governance levels that we all want to see. Zimbabwe needs encouragement. You know, when these things started, I myself tried to say that instead of blames and blames and blames, which may unnerve any government, and the government of Zimbabwe included, some encouragement must be given with the trust that Zimbabwe wants also development. Zimbabwe wants peace. It's not only we who are outside who want peace in Zimbabwe, but Zimbabweans themselves. So a bit of trust to the government of Zimbabwe. They need our support. They need the external support to achieve what they still have to achieve. Your support would be critical in mobilizing bridge financing, setting aside the funds for arrears clearance and multilateral financial institutions, providing technical and financial support to facilitate this arrears clearance process. Your support is also fundamental in helping Zimbabwe deal with the challenging social consequences of the reforms underway, but also it would make a huge difference if creditors and development partners would reconsider their political stances vis-à-vis Zimbabwe, both in bilateral engagements as well as international fora. We from outside Zimbabwe, take advantage of this momentum to convince those who yet don't believe that a change is there in Zimbabwe and that change is to come and stay. Let us all work so that more support comes from those who still do not believe. Because, as I said, we need Zimbabwe. Not only from its centrality in Southern Africa, but also because of the wealth which they have in Zimbabwe, which need to be developed in benefits of all of us. And these skills in putting things right when it comes to world trade, Zimbabwe will play a big role. I remember big names like Shizero, who was working for ECA, big brain, was a Zimbabwean. And so this would help to strengthen the reform process as well as bringing Zimbabwe back to the concert of nations, an endeavor that is so dear for the sustainable development of the Southern Africa region. I thank you.
Very special thank you to the facilitator of the process. Let's give him a round of applause. Thank you so much, Your Excellency, Joachim Chissano, former president of Mozambique and facilitator of the Zimbabwe arrears and debt resolution process. Ladies and gentlemen, we've come to the end of this occasion. I just want to say, yes, from what we heard today, there were some powerful images we were left with. We were told about the teeth and the tongue. They can fight constantly, but they live in the same mouth. That was Dr. Deshina. We heard from, of course, the co-chairs of the various working groups, and I think it was Van Kochman who also took us on a bushwalk, but told us whatever the scares and the snares, we are equipped for that. And of course, we had a very candid assessment from them of where the progress has reached, with a very good presentation from the Minister for Finance, Economic Development, and Investment Promotion, Professor Ntuli Kube. So to all of you, I want to say thank you very much. Let's give them a round of applause. And of course, nothing beats living the experience. Lisa and Andrew, thank you so much for sharing us your experience, more important, for leaving us with hope. And of course, the last word is to you, the audience, and our chief guest. I would like to say he's given us a glimpse of what history was when they were fighting for the liberation of Mozambique, and he foresaw the problem of Zimbabwe, but he's happy that now Zimbabweans are saying, we are talking as Zimbabweans. And as he spoke, I want to leave you with this saying, or proverb, African proverb, which says, what an elder sees while sitting down, a young person cannot see while standing. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for today. Thank you so much, your chief guest. Thank you. Thank you so much.